Hello and welcome into another edition of Coach's Corner. Jordan Woodruff with you. Great to have you along. And today we're joined by strength and conditioning coach for Ponca City Athletics, Miguel Wickert. Miguel, good to have you along.
Thank you. It's great to be back here. I appreciate it. Yeah.
First time we've talked. We've talked a lot, but first time we've got a chance to talk on this show. And I'm always very intrigued with strength and conditioning. You talk to colleges, they'll tell you that's the second most important person on a football staff, for instance.
Absolutely.
And in high school, it's very important too because with those college bodies that have kind of developed in high school, you have developing bodies, which makes a big difference.
Absolutely. And it's a window of opportunity at this stage to help these kids, right? Like just develop. And if they have those ambitions for the next level, a lot of that foundation, you want it to be laid during this time. Absolutely. So.
Yeah. And when it comes to what you focus on, and you have you're trying to incorporate a lot of different ages and levels, of course. So when you focus on, let's start with the younger, are you just focused on the fundamentals? Here's how you come in and do things?
Absolutely. And, you'll have, for example, if we took our ninth graders, a lot of our ninth graders, we want them to obviously know how to get around the weight room, but we want them to be comfortable with your fundamental movement patterns. Right. So beyond just thinking about lifts and the implements you use, you want to think, hey, we want our kids to squat. We want them to know how to hinge at their hip, essentially separate their hip from their spine. We want them to know how to press overhead. We want them to know how to crawl, carry. Very simple, fundamental movements. You start there, but here's the funny thing is that even as you progress, the fundamentals is going to be something you return back to over and over again because you want, at any level, you want them to be able to do those fundamentals just savagely well, right? You want a spirit of excellence about that stage, knowing that you'll build on it, but you'll always return to it.
Yeah, so. And then once you get older, I think of somebody like Hudson Haas on the football team,
Absolutely,
for instance.
Yeah.
That's when you really are starting to work on that fully developed because a guy like that's becoming a grown man.
Absolutely. And then he's an athlete and just a special guy, and just to see what he's able to do, it's incredible. But you're right. And you know what the cool thing is that with him you go back and you think of those, okay, what are the fundamental movement patterns? Okay, how do we start to challenge those same patterns using different tools to help him develop and become a better athlete? At the end of the day, it's not about him being a better weightlifter. Of course, he's not a power lifter. He's extremely strong, but we want him to be a better athlete. We want him to take all that strength and be able to express it on the field. And that's where our speed and our power development comes in.
Yeah. One thing that I like to talk about, strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers as well, they're around all the athletes, not just a couple of sports, around everybody. So you really, when you're like that, you have to tailor things based on the individual kid and the sport they're playing, or in some cases, the multiple sports they're playing.
Absolutely. And, it's it always makes it challenging because you have kids that are going to be, sometimes even up to 3 sports. But, right, so, we talk about those fundamentals. And so regardless of where they're at, you want to keep those in mind. As a strength and conditioning coach, when we're in the weight room, it's, okay, hey, you know what? You might be at this stage in the season, but here's the bare bones of what we're all going to touch on. Now we're going to maybe express how we do certain things at a certain tempo that's going to be different for someone that's in season as opposed to someone that's in the off season. The structure or outline can stay the same, but how you go about those movements can change. And that's where experience, right, time in strength and conditioning, working with kids, and then being able to progress kids or even regress kids based on where they're at, how they've slept, right, how they're recovering, how they're eating, how they're hydrating. So you have to keep all that in mind and then know that you have to be able to pivot at a moment's notice. So.
Yeah. Well, and one thing, when it comes to strength, we're thinking strength and conditioning. You're thinking, okay, in there pumping weights, we're getting bulked up. That's not necessarily the case for everybody. A lot of times you're looking for explosiveness, quickness, footwork. There's things like that too that's involved.
Absolutely. And so since I've been here, we make it a priority. I told our athletic director, I told all of our coaches, we're going to prioritize speed development. If we really want to elevate athletics and us competing with the best, right, in 6A, well, we gotta focus on speed, year-round speed and power development. And so that's gonna look like, hey, we're gonna go outside and sprint. Since I've been here, the school invested, we have a timing system so we can measure and track our sprints. Our kids can see, hey, am I getting faster? Things that I'm doing in the weight room, in the field, is it working? And so that's a great way to do that. So we track our sprints. We have jump mats, so we're testing our verticals every week. If you're in strength and conditioning class here in the district with me, you're gonna get a flying 10 time. We're gonna work on starting speed. We're gonna work on max velocity, top end speed. Some people refer to that as upright sprinting. And then we're gonna work on your vertical jump. And you're gonna know every week where that vertical jump number is in inches. So
Yeah, and then the conditioning part of things. I mean, every coach will tell you, you got to be ready to go at the end of the game, and that's part of it. Strength and conditioning. And the conditioning part sometimes is things that I think gets overlooked until you're in a fourth quarter of a basketball or a football game and you look winded and the other team doesn't.
Right, absolutely. And that's where the interesting thing about, so when we talk about conditioning, one of the things that I've implemented since I've been here, so we have a very thorough movement prep. And for a lot of our kids, that starts to get them sweating. That's the point of it. And it starts to build this capacity. There's an aerobic base that we're always going to address. Every time before we do anything with me, we're going to do that. And so you microdose that, and you'll start to develop that capacity that will just get that table space. You're just that base that you can do your other things, right? Express your power, your speed. And so we do that. Now, the great thing is that when kids go to their practices, when they're with their coaches, now they're going to get that very specific conditioning based on a practice. And so that's where, again, I like to tell our kids, hey, we're going to develop your power, we're going to develop your speed, but know that in developing your top end speed, we're also elevating that low base of your aerobic base, that what we refer to as conditioning. And so they're going to get better by the things that we focus on. Now, is there a time? Absolutely, there will be a time where coaches say, hey, let's go ahead and run our kids. Let's do specific conditioning. Right. And so there's a time and a place for that. We'll do that as well. The cool thing is that you want your kids year round. You want them, hey, can I express my athleticism? Can I do that when I need to? Great, if you can. We don't want to chase conditioning for the sake of just doing that and then fatigue our kids, so it's something that you want to balance and keep in mind.
Well, that goes back to the recovery part of it. That's
Absolutely.
A big part as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
You want to make sure you push them to the limit, but not to the limit where they're off the next day.
Right. And, again, like sport beats you up. It beats up your body. And so one of the good things that I like that we do is, so like in the middle of the week, we'll have a regeneration recovery day. And so we do that with football. We do that. I do it with all my classes. And our kids really appreciate that. And it's a time, there's sometimes a little bit of a movement prep, not as extensive, not as long as we normally do, but we want the body to get warm. We want the tissues to get warm. We want to have a light sweat going on. Then we'll do some band-assisted stretching. We have foam rollers. We'll foam roll the entire body. We're teaching them, giving them the tools so that they can do this themselves. Not just when they're with me, but when they're at home, maybe before or after a competition. Right. That's when you want to start that recovery process. Even just kind of, shutting off the lights, getting in creating that space so that you can even prepare mentally to start that process of recovery. We're teaching our kids that. So.
All right. Miguel with strength and conditioning, and I think one thing I would like to ask is, what is something that maybe people don't understand? What's one of the misconceptions maybe you get from parents, from people on the outside looking in, about what you're doing with strength and conditioning?
I think you hear that phrase, strength and conditioning. A lot of people don't know what that means. So one of the ways to think about it is athletic development, sports performance enhancement, and so people have to realize that. I think strength and conditioning, they think, that's powerlifting. No, it's not. Powerlifting is a whole separate sport.
Yeah.
All right, and so but. Strength and conditioning, I almost wish we could call it something different. And so I just tend to tell our parents, and sometimes even mostly our parents, right? Like, look, we want to help our kids be better athletes. We want to help them be better movers. Now, part of that, we do that in the weight room. We do that. We build them up, but we also want to get outdoors. We want to get into the field. We want to get into space. And so I think that's what people don't realize. we got to get away from just thinking I'm stuck in a dungeon weight room, just grinding out weight, and we gotta move from away from that more toward, hey, we want our kids to be explosive, we want them to be quick, we want them to be able to have fun and then play their sport at a high level.
Well, and part of that is probably the development of the field of strength and conditioning, because 20 years ago, we're in a dungeon. We're working bigger, faster, stronger. That's it. And not necessarily, like sometimes bigger is not a better thing, right? So
Correct.
I think a lot of people have that conception because maybe when they were parents and when they were playing sports, it was a different animal. The science wasn't there as much, and schools weren't putting as much resources into it.
Right. And I think, one of those things that it's interesting when it comes to, I think, the strength and conditioning profession, sometimes people think, well, I just need to go to the gym and I'll get better. Not necessarily. Just like, you get a prescription, a plan to follow. A good strength and conditioning professional will give you that script to prepare you for the demand of your sport and to help you hopefully stay resilient, injury-free, and then perform at a high level. Going to a gym and lifting weights doesn't guarantee that. And that's what people think, oh, well, if I just go and do arms or do some back, that will cover. No. So there's definitely quite a bit more involved.
And one thing that you mentioned there that I think is important too, a lot of injury prevention can come from strength and conditioning.
Absolutely. And, even just like, again, I make it a point to, the way that we prep before we train, whether it's in the weight room, in the field, before it's, and I'm educating our kids and even our coaches, like we want a good movement prep because that can help to prevent some injuries or reduce the likelihood.
Right.
We'll always have injuries, and I wish we didn't. We'll always have it. We'll have it in practice. We'll have it during games after. So there's always going to be injuries. I can never guarantee no injuries, but the way that we prep the body can help reduce the likelihood of an injury. And so that's why we want to do it. Now, we do train with weights. We load the body so that we can create resiliency where we need that, joint by joint, where it's needed. And obviously, there is some aspect of building the armor, if you will. And we I like to kind of talk about that with our kids so they can, hey, we want that armor on to help you to protect yourself. But yeah, this is really laying a foundation for these kids going back to quality movement. Remember, if we can make them better movers, I believe we can also help keep injuries away, right? Not only will that help enhance performance, but I believe we can help reduce that likelihood of injuries. Or, if sometimes they do find themselves in, far from ideal positions, they'll have a little bit more resiliency. Why? Because we put them in those positions in our prep and our training.
And if they understand, they know what to do, know how to do things the right way, they take that with them after high school.
Absolutely, and that's really the big thing for me. It's having been in a collegiate environment and seeing, that Division I environment, seeing kids and worked with those kids as a strength coach. I know what's coming for these kids that want to go and have those opportunities. And so, one of the great things that I enjoy that I get to do is I get to teach lay that foundation and then help prepare them for what they're most likely going to see right at the next level. And so that's really what it's about. It's about equipping our kids and setting them up for their future. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I just know from a lot of my friends back in the day, one of the biggest things that you would hear when they would go play college ball, even on a small level, it's like, it's just different in the weight room. It's just different how we do conditioning. It's different, the intensity of it. And having somebody that's been there can kind of at least get those kids ready if they do that. But even if they don't do that, having that foundation can help set them up for maybe a healthier life in the future.
Right, and that's really a big part of it. And I take pride in that because, a lot of our kids, even those that do play at the next level, whether that's 1, 2, 3, wherever, that's only going to be, for a short time. And so we want them to be competent movers. We want them to know how to stay safe and so that they can continue. Hopefully, this could be a lifelong pursuit of activity, of training, and it's not anything that's unfamiliar or scary for them. And so, that's a part of our approach is we want them equipped for life. We want them to have a good quality life and a long life. And so training can do that for you.
Yeah. Miguel, anything else before we let you go?
No, I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
I enjoyed talking about it. And once again, such an important part of athletics. And health in general. As we know, exercising more, exercising the right way means a lot. And what Miguel's doing is doing some great stuff. So I appreciate your time,
Awesome.
man.
Thank you.
And glad you're here, finally settled in and got things kind of going in the direction you want.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Miguel Wickert. And that's going to do it for our Coach's Corner. Until next time, Jordan Woodruff saying so long, and go Cats.